Last Saturday morning, I found myself sitting in Terminal A of Midway Airport waiting on a flight to Philadelphia. When I hopped out curbside for my wife and my daughter dropping me off, I thought that would be the only trip that I would take that morning until I found myself scrolling through my phone and I would come across an article that your pastor posted on Facebook. The headline of the article would read, "Austin's population drops to number 2 in the city for the first time in 45 years. Now, I don't know what it was about the article or why the article immediately engaged me, but it did. And before I knew it, I was on my way on an unexpected journey before I even stepped in line to board my plane. I didn't know how I would feel by the time I ended up reading it. I didn't know what would be in the article. I just knew that I needed to dive in. And by the time I finished the article, I found myself in a tension. Because I felt joy, I felt hope, I felt promise from so many of the residents, the churches, and the businesses here that saying, we are Austin until we die. We are not giving up on this neighborhood. We are staying here. We are going to fight for it because we are supposed to be here. But then I found myself in a place of pain and in a place of sorrow and a place of questioning God, because some of those same people were saying, even though we are here, there's still some things that we have to pay attention to. There have been people who have given up on this neighborhood. They have left. There's been the city government that has given up on this neighborhood and has not come to give us what we need. There are things going on here that we need help with. By the time I finished, I was in this tension that I told you about. But this article was very insightful. At the least, it gave me a nice background on the history of this wonderful historic neighborhood. It would start all the way back in the year of 1899 when Austin was actually annexed to the city of Chicago. And then it would speed up to 1930 when Austin had about 130,000 residents. Majority of them would be white as they live here. Actually, mostly all of them were white, as this was an affluent city neighborhood. Then it would jump into 1969, 1970, when it would get its first influx of middle-class African-American families moving from the crowded South Side. And some of you who love diversity, I know you love diversity at this church, your heart is cheering because 1970 is the year when we get to experience diversity for the first time in this neighborhood. But let's not move too fast. Because as diversity came, deceitfulness started to take place also. There will be people in this very neighborhood that did not like the diversity that came here. They were real estate agents, and what they would do is they would go on the doors and knock on the doors of white residents and tell them, you know, some other kind of people are moving in here. If I was you, I would sell your house right now and move as fast as you can. And that would happen not only in this neighborhood, but all over our countries when neighborhoods started to be integrated. And that's where we get the term white flight. Now, what would happen is that they would take these houses from these white residents in the neighborhood that they bought at a fair market price, and they would sell them at an unjust, at a dangerous, at a high market price to African Americans or whatever minority was moving into the neighborhood. And some statistics say that the mortgages were so high that people couldn't just live in there with one family. They had to invite people to live in their home just to be able to pay their mortgage. And before you knew it, by the 1980s, Austin was a predominantly African-American neighborhood. But then it would go to the year 2000. And it actually focused on the years of 2007 to 2009 when the housing market would crash. And it would say that Austin was the hardest hit neighborhood in our city. That 1 out of every 5 houses, 1 out of every 5 apartments, 1 out of every 5 residences would end up in foreclosure because of the housing market crash. It would talk about how Austin is only 8 miles away from our highly coveted and highly funded loop section of the city, but it suffers some of its residents. 30% live in poverty. Now, poverty is a blanket statement sometimes. It's a blanket term sometimes, and I don't think we understand that. You see, me and your pastor, even though we are best friends, we grew up kind of different. You see, poverty in my household and how I saw it growing up and my ignorance was we didn't get a chance to go on family vacation for a year. Poverty for your pastor was coming home and not having food on the table. Poverty for people in my neighborhood where I pastor at right now is not eating. And that's the real definition of poverty. And we need to get acquainted with the definition so we can find out how to help. Now, some of you may be sitting up here wondering, why is this pastor standing in front of me tossing out all these hard to swallow facts about my neighborhood and he's a visitor? But before I tell you why I'm doing it, let me tell you why I'm not. I'm not doing it because I see Austin as this helpless neighborhood that needs to be rescued. That is not the truth. And let me tell you something about our city, especially the city of Chicago. As your pastor terms it, it's a city that is beautifully broken. And no matter what neighborhood we are in, everybody needs Jesus. And there's some stuff going on behind closed doors that you would not imagine. Some of the city's greatest, some of the city's best live right here in this neighborhood. Actually, the first time I was acquainted with your neighborhood, when your pastor in this church came to plant here, it was at the graduation, the high school graduation, the year before last of this very school. I got a chance to meet your president, and I am still shocked. I am still in awe by the speech and the challenge that the valedictorian of this high school gave to her high school class. Some of the best and the brightest come from Austin. I am not standing here in front of you because I'm the guy that gets to spend 2 hours with you and tell you how to solve the problems in your neighborhood. No, it's not that. I am not standing here because I want us to pass judgment on those who have given up, on those who have moved out. We don't know what they've endured. We don't know what they've been through. We don't know how long they stayed. We don't know the work they've done. I'm not standing here because of that. I'm actually not standing here to even make a statement. I'm standing here because after I read that article, it posed a question in my heart. That when everybody else feels as though it's their time, people who have been here 30, 40 years living their lives feel as though it's their time to pack up the moving truck and move out. God, what makes your people, believers, move in? When a neighborhood can be at its lowest point anywhere in our city, God, what causes your church to say, I understand people are going. I understand people are giving up. I understand people are leaving. I understand people are giving stereotypes. But God, instead of packing up and moving out with the rest, we're going to pack our truck and move in. What causes the people of God to do that?